What's going on with Mississippi State's ground game, and what's the latest on two key starters that have been injured? Jeff Lebby gave some answers. Let's break it all down.
You are Locked On Mississippi State, your daily podcast on the Mississippi State Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bet now. My name is Jaron Spor. I'm a national college football writer at Athlon Sports. Landon will not be able to be joining with me. He told me to say it's because he is mourning a key loss that we will get to in our injury updates. But the reality is he had a prior commitment with his other job. So he isn't able to join us today. But we're going to talk about those injuries because two key starters got not the best diagnosis. Also, we're going to break down, kind of recap some of the national games that took place this past weekend. But first, like we do every Tuesday, let's get into what Jeff Lebby had to say during his press conference. And the thing that stood out to me outside of the injuries, which again we'll talk about in the second segment, was the running game. The running game was something that Landon and I have talked about quite a bit this offseason. We talked about it even heading into the Arizona State game that, hey, we thought the strength of the team was the running game. You know, Devon Booth, Fluff Bothwell, that offensive line, we thought they were a better run blocking offensive line than they were a pass blocking offensive line. And I think they've shown that in some ways, but they've also surprised as a pass blocking offensive line. But Lebby was asked about this because obviously it's not been great up to this point. Just 126 yards rushing through two games. Just not the best performance on the ground. And last week was one that I really thought they would be able to run the football, and they really kind of struggled to run the football. And then let's see, they only had, Fluff had 34 yards, Booth had 33 yards, Shaping had 6 yards. Neither one had a lot of carries, only 8 for Fluff, 9 for Booth. But yeah, it's got to get better, especially with conference play coming up. They ran for, 66 yards total on 30 carries. That's just not good enough. That you were able to beat Arizona State because you hit some big dynamic passes, but that's not something you want to rely on once you get into SEC play. And so hopefully that's something they can establish this weekend against Alcorn State to kind of get some momentum going on that. But Jeff Lebby was asked about that, and he kind of gave the typical coach speak, but he said, yeah, there's been multiple things in the run game that has kept us from being explosive and kept us from bringing where we need to be. And from, whether it's run per play average being over 5 yards a carry, where that's our goal, that's where we want to be. But then there's also the explosive part where we need chunks in the run game to go do what we want to do. And it's been something a little different every time. Arizona State did a really good job of heavy in the box. That's what created a bunch of the chunks. And for us, man, the ball, finish mentality has to continue to get better so that we have the ability to do what we need to do in the running game. So again, your typical coach speak, not anything that was eye-opening based on what he said. But I will say this, because again, I still think the running game is going to be the best part of the team. I think Bothwell and Booth are just too good of players to really be held in check like they have been at this point. The offense line was worse last year, and Booth had a great end to the season. And this is why I will say this as a little bit of optimism. In Jeff Lebby's history, if you go back and watch him at Oklahoma, they really, and then, he didn't really call the plays at Ole Miss. It was Kiffin, obviously, but Lebby was there. But if you go back to when he was calling the plays at Oklahoma, his teams typically started slow running the football and then would start picking up about mid-season and then, be decent running teams. His last year at Oklahoma, they weren't great at running the football, but that's because the first 5 or 6 games, they were really bad at it. The last 6, they had a 100-yard rusher, I believe, in all 6 games. So they eventually became a pretty good running team, but the overall numbers aren't going to show that. And then his first year, I think they were number 10 in the country in rushing, and again, kind of started slow. Had a game here that I think Nebraska game that first year, they had some success, but Nebraska was really bad, obviously. But Other than that, they didn't have a ton of success. And, Arizona State did bring back an experienced defense line. I still thought that is probably the weakness of the defense, and I still think it's the weakness of the defense. But if you ask me, the strength of the defense is probably the secondary, and Mississippi State shredded the secondary. So it was not a good day for their secondary. But and it might have been they were to an extent kind of selling out to stop the run, because that's kind of what makes these offenses go. But it also seemed like he wasn't really committed to the run. Again, only 8 and 9 carries for Bothwell and Booth. That's really just not enough. But that's why I really hope that they come out against Alcorn State looking to establish the line of scrimmage and saying, hey, we're going to dominate the line of scrimmage. We're going to try to get a 250, 300-yard running game here to kind of get that momentum going and let the offensive line get some momentum as well, build that camaraderie, and just really just push them around. And that's what I expect to happen. And that's really should be the mentality for them, because they need to get the running game going really for them the next 2 games, not just Alcorn State, but also Northern Illinois. Get that going before you play Tennessee. I think that is the key. And that's kind of what I would expect them to do these next 2 games, because you can throw. You have receivers now that you feel pretty good about. You have 2 at least, because Anthony Evans and Brendan Thompson had like all the receptions. And I'm not saying don't throw it all. I'm not saying to go out there and go wishbone. Like, you definitely got to throw, and you got to throw quite a bit. But I would really try to maybe a 60-40 split, 70-30 split running to pass, because they really need to get this running game going. And that's kind of been my only concern. That you're 2-0, you upset a top 12 team in the country, team that made the college football playoff last year. A lot of positives. So there's not many negatives you can take away, but one negative would be I thought the run game would be a little farther on than it is. And we saw against Southern Miss, they didn't really run it all the first half. Then they kind of went to it a little more in the third quarter and took that game over and kind of ran away with that game. So we know it's there. And we've seen flashes of it. I just don't think they've been as committed to it as I thought they would be. And I don't really know why. I mean, Albert Reese, just won SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week. Because he had a strong performance. So you have some offensive linemen that are playing good football, and that's also in the passing game. So the offensive line is playing better than a lot of people expected. But yeah, I just think that they could be a little better than they've been. I think they can be a team that it really doesn't matter the team they're playing. They can run the football. And I'm not saying they run for 200 every game, no matter who they play. I'm just saying I think that can always be kind of the key to success for them, and that just hasn't happened yet. So that's my expectation this upcoming week. And again, it was kind of coach speak, but it is true. There are some little things that are happening where they're just misreading a gap, or just missing a block assignment by just a hair, or missing the cut back lane. It all goes into it. It's never just the offensive line play bad, just the running backs play bad, just the tight ends play bad. All of it goes into it, and they just haven't fully connected yet. And that's something that I really expect to happen, somewhat soon. But we'll have to wait and see if it does end up connecting. But that's something that I think they really need to lean on the next 2 weeks. But all right, coming up next, major injury updates. Some sad news out of Starkville from Jeff Lebby. He talked about it as well. We'll break down what happened and what all he said. All right, well, time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-hour energy transfusion. This grape, ginger, and lime flavored shot brings the iconic taste of a golf course favorite to a non-alcoholic boost. Perfect for sinking birdies or making great memories with friends. It's a hole-in-one for your energy game. So if you're someone who likes to golf, I would definitely check out 5-hour energy. Whether you're out on the course or just need a little extra push to power through your day, 5-hour energy transfusion delivers the clubhouse flavor you love without ever leaving the green. My favorite memory with golf is I have a lot of just solo memories, but overall my favorite memory is it's just a great time for me and my buddies to get out on the course. I have 6 best friends that I would consider my best friends, and they've been my best friends since I was probably 5 or 6 years old. Since about elementary school, we've been best friends. And that's just the way we get together and hang out nowadays. Obviously, all of us are married. Some have kids, some don't have kids. Some live in different states, and that's just our way of getting together and spending some time together. Obviously, we have the group chat, stuff like that, but golf is always our kind of thing that we go to. And, it's always something that I really look forward to, even if we don't end up playing well. But golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors. The Grape Ginger Lime flavor of 5-hour energy transfusion gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without leaving the course or chasing down the beverage cart. Now you can amp up the fun even more. Just buy, snap, and enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip or two to any golf tournament in the USA. Tee up that trip. Visit 5hewin.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament and ends October 31st, 2025. And the NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I know a lot of people that use FanDuel, they love it because it fits however they like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, so let's get into some injury updates. Again, not good news. Will Whitson obviously went down in the game against Arizona State. Blake Steen, the starting offensive lineman that they got from Virginia, was really high on him. He went down in the Southern Miss game. Jeff Lebby was asked for an update. He said, yeah, just an update on Will and Blake. Both those guys are down for the season, so won't get either of them back. Incredible opportunity for our next guys in. Not going to have either one of those guys. So, yeah, just a devastating blow, especially Will Whitson. Will was a guy that, what was he, SEC? Yeah, he was SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week in week 1, and he came back with a strong performance in week 2 when he was playing. He has 8 tackles. 5 of those are tackles for loss, and he has 2 sacks. I mean, he was just having a monster season. Blake Steen was a guy, obviously, that they liked a lot, and all you heard all offseason was he was probably their best starting offensive lineman. I didn't think he had the best debut, but that was kind of what you were hearing. And he goes down in the first half of that game, and they really kind of took off in the second half. But, again, I think they kind of went more to the run game, and that played more of a factor than Blake Steen being out. But so they haven't had him since then. But still, you didn't want to lose depth to your offensive line with Blake Steen, because while the offensive line I think has played well and has played above what a lot of people expected, it's still not a great unit. I wouldn't even necessarily say it's a good unit. It's a average to a little above average unit right now, which is really good compared to what they were last year. So you just can't lose another key piece where, at worst, he's at least someone that you can rotate in. And, when some guys need rest or, obviously he was a starter, and I think he would still be the starter, honestly, if he had to keep playing or if, he didn't get injured. Will, on the other hand, again, not a ton of depth on the defensive line either. So that's a big shot, but he was playing the best on that D-line. I mean, he was really wreaking havoc. And really when he got hurt, I'm trying to remember exactly how much time was left in the game, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that's about when Arizona State started taking off, was when he got hurt, because he really was playing really good football for them this year, obviously, with the 5 tackles for loss and the 2 sacks. I mean, this was a team last year that couldn't get hardly any tackles for loss. They couldn't get any sacks. They were one of the worst in the country at both of those, and so far during this season, they haven't been bad at either one of those, and it's because of, again, Will Whitson. Let's look at how many tackles for loss the team has, because they're not going to be like top 10 in the country or anything like that. They're not having that kind of season, but I also don't think they're near the bottom like they were last year either. Let's see. Well, actually, they're still not great at it, but They have 9 tackles for loss, but again, 5 of those are Will Whitson. So that's why that is such a bad loss, because outside of him, and I kind of knew this, but I wasn't really sure how everyone else had been doing. But outside of Will Whitson, they haven't had much success at all with tackles for loss, which is, again, something that really plagued the team last year. And they really haven't had much success with sacks either outside of Will Whitson. Both of those things were probably the worst part of the defense last year. I know you could pick almost anything that was the worst part of the defense last year. But rushing the passer, getting tackles for loss, that forces teams into uncomfortable situations defensively, and makes it where, now the coverage unit has to cover longer. And, the linebackers have to run with the tight end longer. Whatever the case may be. Maybe it's the DBs, maybe it's the run coverage. Linebackers have to get in there to make more tackles. Isaac Smith had to come in and make more tackles. Yeah, they had 3 sacks on the entire season. That's 79th in the country. Again, 2 of those are Will Whitson. I mean, that's bad. That's the big loss right there. But yeah, because they were so bad at all that, it affected the whole defense. Or one reason why I think the defense has looked a little better this year is because a guy like Will Whitson has been wrecking havoc in the backfield. And we saw them really start to run the football in the second half. Again, it was I believe about the time Whitson went out. And so that's now your worry moving forward, because, yeah, you brought in all these transfers, but Whitson was the one that was playing really, really good football. And I know Lana keeps saying, how is he going to get rid of that ore? Well, unfortunately, he's going to get rid of that ore because he's not going to be on the depth chart, which is, again, just a massive blow, because you could argue, again, Isaac Smith, I believe, is still the best player on the entire team, not just the defense. But you could have argued that Will Whitson was playing the best. And I know Isaac Smith, he's got 15 tackles so far this year. Doesn't have any tackles for loss yet, or sacks or anything like that. But, he kind of plays that hybrid position. So you're not going to expect a lot of sacks from him, but some tackles for loss would be nice for him to get up in the backfield and make some of those plays. But yeah, that's why that loss is so big, losing Will Whitson, is because you're not having much production outside of him, which was your biggest issue of everything last year was the sacks and the tackles for loss. And you looked like you were finally going to somewhat fix that. And it was because you had a guy that you could rely on, and then you lost him. Real quick before we go to break, Lebby was asked about trying to get him an extra year, because obviously this would be his last year, I believe. Or actually, I don't think this would be his last year. I think he has 2 years of eligibility left. No, this is his last year. That's right, because I believe he was a JUCO transfer to Coastal Carolina. But yeah, and Lebby said that's something they're working on right now. I would assume that would be the same case for Blake Steen as well. Now, Blake's a guy that is a junior, but, get that extra year in terms of, have 2 years left still. I'm sure that's something they're working on, but he wasn't asked about that, but I'm sure that's something they're working on as well. But all right, coming up next, we got to talk about the national game recaps. There were some really good games outside of the Mississippi State one, so let's talk about that coming up next. All right, well, college football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up Game Time in just a couple of taps. I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games as low as $25. The app made it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. I've talked about that many times. That's my favorite part about Game Time. A lot of these other ones, you have no clue where you're going to sit at. You might have to search the stadium to see if they have a view of it somewhere. Game Time gives you that view right off the bat, and the app makes it really simple. I could even see a lot of different things with not just my seat view, just how basic the app makes it, and then you don't get hit with surprise fees and things like that, because we know that's where you got on a lot of these other sites, but Game Time does not do that. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, so let's recap some of the national games of the week. The only ranked matchup was between the Oklahoma Sooners and the Michigan Wolverines. It was the number 18 team Oklahoma against number 15 Michigan. That was where College Game Day was. Obviously, a massive game in terms of the school's prestige, both blue blood type programs. Two of the best programs in the history of the sport. But Oklahoma came out with a 24-13 win. The defense looked dominant for the Sooners like it was last year. The offense made some mistakes, but was able to overcome it. And again, that's probably not a game they win last year because the offense was so inept. So John Mateer looks like the real deal for them. Looks like a guy that could possibly win the Heisman Trophy. And he's the guy that's going to try to get the Sooners back to the college football playoff for the first time since 2019. On the Michigan side, still pretty good defensively. Bryce Underwood, I know he's going to get a lot of flack for his performance because people are just going to look at the stats. I thought he actually played pretty well. It was a very conservative game plan, which makes a lot of sense. True freshman quarterback, first game on the road. Brent Venables calling the defense against you. But, man, he showed some special things. I think he's going to be a real gamer moving forward. Florida and South Florida, that was kind of the shocker. I almost went with that as my upset of the week just because South Florida really impressed me with that Boise State game. And South Florida pulled off the shocker, 18-16 win at Florida, which we're going to talk about their non-conference slate. South Florida played Boise State to start the year, number 25, goes to Florida, and I believe they go to Miami this week. That's a tough non-conference slate. But, yeah, South Florida knocks off the Gators. Gets the win 18-16. Florida just, looked like the team last year, heading into last year when Billy Napier was on the hot seat. And I've seen a lot of reports that say he's probably on the hot seat again because that was a very, very rough showing for Florida. DJ Lagway was really bad in the game. Really hasn't looked like himself. Again, all those offseason reports about his shoulder injury that makes you think that it might be a little more serious than they're letting on. But yeah, not a good performance for the Gators, which they got a big matchup against LSU this weekend. So we'll see what happens there. Oregon, that was a blowout. They dominated Oklahoma State 69-3. That one jumped out to me just because, Mike Gundy's been a solid coach at Oklahoma State. Just 2 years ago, they're in the Big 12 championship game. Obviously, last year did not go the way they wanted. But it always feels like with Mike Gundy, when you don't expect them to do well, they're going to do well. And so that was kind of the feeling this year. It was like, hey, a lot of people didn't expect them to do well, so this is the year they're going to do well. But that's not obviously that's not how that happened against Oregon. And Oregon, they jumped up in the polls. They look like a team that could be a legit team this season. So again, and they had some question marks after losing Dylan Gabriel and some other pieces, but they look like they haven't skipped a beat from last year. The last one I wanted to talk about was Illinois and Duke, just because that was my upset. I was really impressed with Duke's offense. And Duke just beat themselves all game long. Had 4 or 5 turnovers in the game. Lost 45-19. The score looks worse than it was. It was really close all game until the very end. But Duke's offense they couldn't get out of their own way. Bad turnovers, fumbles, interceptions. It was just a really rough day for the Blue Devils. They looked like that team because I thought they were a team that, okay, maybe they can compete in the ACC, be a surprise like SMU. They looked like that typical team that it's like, okay, they're a year away. Next year, I think they will really be able – now they have to, keep progressing, obviously. But if they're able to, I think next season's the year that the Blue Devils can make some noise. Or, maybe they can rally and make some noise this year. But that Illinois game was not a good start. And it was a bad pick on my part. So maybe I'll put the curse on you. Well, all right. It's another big moment on Locked On College Football fans. Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside 2-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. College football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. I'm Jaron. Check out my work over at Athlon Sports. Also follow us, Locked On Mississippi State. We're on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. Post daily videos Monday through Friday, so check those out. Also, at last check, we were just under the 1,000 subscriber goal that I had by the early college football season. No, we just hit it. So thank you guys so much for your support. We really appreciate it. Seriously, Landon will be back tomorrow, and we'll talk more about it. But no, seriously, guys, thank you so much for all the support and helping us reach our goal. It is greatly appreciated. And yeah, until next time, hail State.